portals. Okay, now that we're done with all that, let's continue work on finishing up this bedrock breaking process. What up, my roomies, and welcome back to the technical guide to Minecraft. And it's been a while, I know. Been a very long time. But we're back, and we're going to be continuing our bedrock breaking. Although, by the time you'll see this, I'll be probably 1 month or so behind because I'll be away for a bit. Although, by the time you see this video, you'll probably already know why. In any case, we're sticking around our slime farm in order to get some more slime. And now, granted, we don't really need that much. In fact, we don't really need much at all. But I figured since we're going to be using slime, that'd be a good idea to then just go get some slime so that we could fill it into the storage center. Now, why do we need slime? Now, normally on the previous episodes, those methods really didn't need any slime blocks. So what makes this different? Well, here's the thing. We're going to need to destroy 96 by 96 blocks, and that's only for one layer. We have to go through at least 5 layers. Now, doing everything one by one is obviously, it's not going to be a good time. We're going to need a way to make it faster. Now, for the purposes of this tutorial, we're going to keep everything as simple as possible while also introducing some mechanics in order to make massive bedrock breaking operations a little easier. So, with that introduction in mind, welcome to Kikakor, where safety is a concern. So over here we have our basic bedrock breaker, which you'll notice is one that I use in order to break bedrock, and we've used it countless times during our times in this series. Now, the basic idea is as follows. Now, before we only discussed how it works, but now we'll actually discuss the why of why it works. So just to go over it real quick, we'll just go down, then we're going to hold right click and press F3T. And then from here, we're going to flick that lever and then look at this corner over here, switching over to our piston. So just like so, click, and then, and with that, we will see that it has broken bedrock right underneath. But why does this work? On the previous episode, when we were talking about the tree farm, we were talking about quasi-connectivity. And this kind of branches off of that because it plays off of one of the mechanics known as stasis. So going over that real quick, putting something to stasis is as easy as setting this up. Now, the piston hasn't activated because that piston has not updated. But if we were to update this block, then it becomes open. And by just deleting that, it stays in its open position. It's in stasis. And as a result, because it's in stasis, that means that it'll remain open despite the fact that there's clearly no energy going into the piston. So if you were to delete this, it'll retract back because the block updates. But what if we did this? Now, obviously it's being powered by this block, but if you were to delete the bottom, you'll see that it's still in stasis because technically it's also being powered by the redstone block on top. But if you were to delete this as well, now it's fully independent and fully in stasis. And we could use this to our advantage. Now, as some of you may know, having to set up this whole contraption over and over again is quite time consuming. And while setting one up only takes a couple of seconds, when you spread that out 96 by 96 by 5 times, you're looking at way too long of a time. I'm not going to grab a calculator and do that math for you, but yeah, just suffice to say, it takes a very long time. Now, the reason why I mention this and the reason why I mentioned stasis is because by utilizing this and this, we could start breaking bedrock. But how? The way that this contraption works is that when it first powers this TNT and then powers this TNT. Because of that almost sub-tick activation, this is technically faster than this. So this will detonate, destroying the power source, which will then begin to retract this piston. But at the same time, because this TNT is also lit, it'll destroy the piston head, resulting in its own block update. But because this is activated second to this, while this piston is still up, it'll first destroy the piston head and then the piston. So while this is retracting, the entity of the piston head is still active. So this will get destroyed while retracting, while then destroying the piston beneath it. While that's getting destroyed, we then are able to click our way here and then replace this piston with the piston facing down. So if you were to freeze this, you could see that after a step, that small jitter you just saw right there is the piston itself retracting back. So while this explodes, depowering this piston, less than a tick afterwards, this thing also explodes, destroying the piston head. But this is in the animation of pulling back its piston, all in the same tick. So if I were to take one step, you'll notice that it fully retracts. We use this to our advantage in order to exploit piston heads as a method to break bedrock. So if you were to put this in one more time, and then we're gonna keep going tick by tick until it explodes, one tick by one tick, you'll notice that explosion. And right now that you probably couldn't see it, but the piston head is in the middle of being destroyed. So if we were to put down a piston right here facing down, you can see that in the next step, that for a brief moment, you probably saw the piston kind of jiggle, because right now the piston is still retracting backwards, downwards. But because the original piston was facing up, it flips itself back up, and that's why we see the indicator of the piston facing up, because right now it's still retracting its piston head. So if you were to take another step, you could see that the piston is pulling itself from the bottom back up top. And I know that's a little confusing to like kind of grasp, but hopefully that kind of makes sense in how this whole thing works, is that we're basically going through subticks in order to make the piston head retract in a way isn't really normal for it to retract. So if you go through another step, you'll see that everything resets, and even though we pointed this piston downwards, it's now facing up. And if you were to destroy this block, it has destroyed bedrock. So now we're going to put down 9 sticky pistons on the bottom, and then we're going to put down 9 regular pistons on top. And the configuration of this is very important, so make sure the sticky pistons are on the bottom, not the top. Then we're going to take our netherrack or whatever building material, but we're going to use netherrack anyway, so it's good to just have it as your building material, and just make a line of it going left and right. In the middle, we'll go up by 1 and then delete the bottom. Then from here, put down a lever. When you put down your lever, put down your redstone line. Then diagonally from the netherrack, put down another netherrack, light it on fire, put an obsidian, and then put a piston right on top of the netherrack behind the obsidian, and then plonk down an end crystal. And this is the basic configuration of how we're going to make a bunch of these pistons go into headless stasis form. Well, the first part of it anyway. See, when we activate this lever, because of quasi-connectivity, it'll update the top and bottom. And because the piston head acts as the bud for the sticky pistons down below, once the top activates, the bottom will also activate. All the while, because this piston is also being activated, it'll then interact with this end crystal and push it into this fire. The fire and the end crystal will result in kind of a large explosion. So while the sticky pistons and the regular pistons are extending forward, and because the regular pistons and the sticky pistons are being activated moments before the pistons gets activated, that means that the end crystal is just marginally slower in exploding than these pistons get activated. Right before this explodes, because these are activated, the piston heads are technically going forward, and then while this explodes, only the piston heads will then get destroyed. So let's demonstrate. I'm going to activate this, and you'll see that this whole thing turns on. So this piston and these pistons will all get activated. If we take a step forward, you'll see that it explodes. Because these pistons are getting activated moments before this explodes, these technically have, you can call it a right of way, just to make it easier to conceptualize. The piston heads are going forward and instantly get gibbed by the end crystal. But we're not done yet. No, this is the first step in making a line of headless pistons. We then have to put this into stasis, and as we talked about before, in order to put something into stasis, all you gotta do is put 2 rows of redstone blocks. Then from here, you'll be safe to destroy the line of redstone behind it, and then you'll be able to delete the bottom redstone block layer, and then finally the top. And now the sticky pistons and the pistons are both headless in stasis mode. Now the cool thing about this is that if you want to extend this line, all you gotta do is then put down a redstone block right there, so that this remains shooting forward. And because this is still activated, when I put a block right next to it, it won't update the bottom because there's no bud for it to activate. So now we can put down another 9, set this entire thing up, and then just do it all over again. And then just like before, you just put this whole thing into stasis by simply putting down a line of redstone blocks, right on top of it another line of redstone blocks, and then you could safely delete the back row. It's really that simple. And because of the nature of how this is set up, you can make this as long as you need. Quick interruption. I noticed that only 12% of you are actually subscribed to this channel. Watching this long, I must be doing something right, so if you like this video, hit that like button and please subscribe to this channel. Any support helps, and these videos take a bit long to make. Thank you so much, and back to the video. But this by itself, of course, is not going to be enough to destroy bedrock. You're going to need a machine in order to make this whole thing break bedrock, because in the end of the day, Headless Pistons don't do anything unless you have a piston to flip and destroy the bedrock. And this is where this machine comes into play. This machine is made by EDDxample. Please check his video out in the description below, because without him, I really don't know how to more simply destroy a lot of bedrock without extremely large machines. This is probably the most friendly way of deleting a lot of bedrock in a really reasonable amount of time. So I already went ahead and created a line of stasis headless pistons. We're going to hit this node block, which will then cause the observer to then cause the flying machine to go forward once. When the flying machine then goes forward, the observers are going to notice a block change. That'll result in pushing the second part of the machine. The second part of the machine will then move these redstone blocks forward while also dragging this piston forward to prevent the next headless pistons from activating, while also allowing this one to then activate. And the reason why this closest one activates when this whole thing gets pushed forward is because there's no redstone blocks here. But here's the thing, just because these headless pistons don't appear to have piston heads, it doesn't mean that the game recognizes that it doesn't have it at all. See, when a block update occurs, the piston heads will then reappear and basically swallow the piston up, and because it's pointing down while also retracting, it'll then cause the bedrock beneath it to then also get deleted. It'll all happen very quickly, and you might not be able to see it that well, even with the tick steps, but let's see how it works as best as we can anyway. So right now that's activated. The observer notices a change and will then start pushing this forward. From this position, the observer will then notice a change and then will push the second part of this machine forward. So because it happened very quickly, you'll notice that the piston is now facing up. But why? And what happened to the other piston? Well, here's the thing. The piston that we faced down was taken over by a normal piston that was facing up. And because it got swallowed up due to the fact that these piston heads got reactivated, the piston that was facing down got swallowed up basically by the sticky piston, while the piston that took its place was the originally facing up piston that was extended to begin with. And so it started retracting. And like before, because the piston was retracting while also getting deleted, it then pulls the bedrock out and deletes it. And you could see the final aftermath of the entire thing right here. You can see that this piston originally was facing down, but now is facing up, has now deleted bedrock. And as this machine goes forward, the whole thing will then reset. And all the player has to do now is to delete the ones that was there originally and then place a new one. Now, how this looks like in real time, it's rather quick. It's even fast even if you don't have Tweakaroo. And by doing so, we'll be able to close out a 96 by 96 area and delete bedrock pretty easily. Now, I know this whole explanation is really long-winded and perhaps a little complicated, but in order to understand how future bedrock breaking methods work, we have to understand the basics of headless pistons and their play in the whole bedrock breaking game. Now, the biggest problem with this is because once we get to the lower levels, every corner of the bedrock breaking operation will have a layer of bedrock that's just not going to be able to be broken, because that's where the machine is going to fit. And as a result, you're not going to be able to delete every single bedrock but this way, in which case we'll have to go back to the old tried and true method of a double layer obsidian bedrock breaking. But considering that we're going to be deleting a lot of bedrock rather simply, having this small trade-off is definitely worth it. And while we still have to break bedrock one by one manually, it really does shave off a lot of time. So once again, thank you so much to EDDxample for giving us this machine that'll basically be the main crux of how we're going to do this insane bedrock breaking operation. Please check out his video in the description below, as it'll actually go through in better detail on some of the aspects of this machine as well as his building methodology. And for those that want to play around with this world, there's going to be a schematic and a world download in the description below. And with that in mind, let's head back to the technical guide world and get to it. So the first thing you'll notice is that, well, the entire thing is basically done by now. If you're wondering why or what happened to the replay thing, well, it's because basically I wasn't home for all of June. The first layer that you saw on the replay was basically the first week I was here at home in June before I had to go off and go take care of some business. And if you're wondering what that business was, you can check out the video on the top right as to what exactly was going on in my life. Suffice it to say, during my free time, I was just basically just breaking bedrock more or less all the time. I don't know. When you get into the rhythm of it, it's actually not that stressful. It's actually kind of, I don't know, I found it relaxing. I can understand why people would get like very annoyed with it over time, but I don't know, I kind of found it relaxing personally. But that's neither here nor there. Now that we're done with the bedrock breaking process, it's time to upgrade the base even further. But even before we upgrade the base, we're still gonna have to do one more thing. We're gonna have to upgrade the world.